Because this isn't about Republicans and Democrats. It's about defending the Constitution that we swore an oath to uphold and acting decisively when it may be compromised. No member of this body needs to be reminded of what the Constitution states about the President's obligation to faithfully execute the laws of our nation. No member needs to be reminded of the bonds of trust that have been frayed or the damage that's already been done to our economy and to our people.
It is not hard to find words from various pundits about the midterm elections and, in the opinion of many, how Republicans are in perfect position to be in total control heading for the 2016 presidential election. But bubbling under the surface is the suspicious rancor in the party itself, much focused on House Speaker John Boehner and whether or not he is actually still the man in control. Do not adjust your picture. We will control the volume and direction for the next few moments and make it all clear. Joining us on MidPoint, Media Director for the Federation for Immigration Reform, Ira Mehlman, joins us today. Ira, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks very much.
Ira, in your opinion and in the opinion of your group, is it any shock whatsoever to see how rancorous, the word I mentioned earlier, and how split the Republican Party has truly become on this issue of immigration? It is a constant fight between themselves.
Well, yeah, and I think, first of all, it is a split between the leadership and the rank and file in the House. I think what you saw last week was that the vast majority of the Republicans in the House did not want to go along with the sham that the leadership was trying to perpetrate last week. The original bill that they were planning to bring to the floor would have made some cosmetic changes, but really wouldn't have changed the underlying reasons why we're seeing this massive illegal immigration coming across the border right now. And at the last minute, the leadership finally had to pull it off the floor and replace it with a sensible bill that it goes after the adjustments to the Anti-Trafficking Act. Nobody wants to see trafficking, but we've had a lot of people trying to take advantage of the loopholes in that law to just clog up our system. And then they passed a second bill, clipping the president's wings a bit. The president announced in 2012 the DACA program, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is essentially an executive amnesty. The Republicans have done nothing for 2 years. Finally, they recognized that, number one, it's unconstitutional, and number two, it was a magnet drawing a lot of young people to the United States illegally. So they're finally taking some positive steps in the right direction. Obviously, it's going nowhere in the Senate, and obviously the president is never going to sign a bill like that, but at least it puts down a marker, and the ball's now in the Democrats' court, in the Senate, and in the president's court.
But is the marker really going to mean anything when you have a president who says he simply will not do business in a certain fashion and he is willing to run his executive order whenever he can?
Well, that remains to be seen. Look, I think everybody expects that sometime this month, the president is going to come out and do exactly what he said he didn't have the power to do on many occasions. He said he does not have the authority to grant amnesty to millions of people who are in the country illegally and simply ignore laws passed by Congress. And yet that seems to be exactly what he is planning on doing. And it's going to be up to the Republicans in the House to determine what actions they can take. The Constitution isn't clear about what the Congress can do when the president refuses to obey the constitutional limits of his office. But then again, there's also November coming up, and the voters will have their say. So there are a lot of things that can happen, but, we're getting into constitutionally murky waters. Nobody's been down this road before, and they're going to have to figure it out as they go along.
Is this a win for the Republicans, regardless, because they're seen, at least by some people, as being active, and the fact that the president will put his pen to it, the Democrats aren't there, that at least they're doing something? So do you card this as a win, or is it still murky?
Well, it's a win for the American people. What they passed on Friday night was at least a good first step to trying to get the situation under control. And I think the American public understands that what you need to do is you need to end the incentives for people to come to the United States illegally. That's what the bill did. It didn't remove all of the incentives, but it's a good first step. The Senate is out of town. They're not going to vote on it. When they come back, they're not going to take up this bill at all. And so, for politically speaking, if the Republicans want to make an issue of it, sure, they've got a great issue. Look, we did something to correct the problem. The other guys refused to play ball. You, the American public, decide.
You used the word sham a little while ago, and many people are using it as well. If you would, for those who are interested, what is the difference between a sham and simply trying to compromise, which some people will always tell you, look, that's what the lawmakers need to do in the first place, is at least find some compromise somewhere, at least get started going in that direction.
Well, the whole premise of the immigration debate over the past couple of years is that somehow law-abiding American citizens have to compromise with the people who have broken our laws. There are certain situations in which compromise is appropriate and something that we should be working toward. In other situations, compromise isn't something that you want to work toward. Look, there's clearly a right and a wrong here. The American public has a right to have its interests defended, to have their jobs protected, to have their tax dollars protected, to have their security protected. Nobody around the world has a right to violate our laws. We need to deal compassionately with people, but we need to deal firmly as well, because those laws are there to protect the interests of the American people. And quite frankly, neither party in Washington has been effectively protecting the interests of the American people on immigration policy, or probably a lot of other policies.
Ira, in your opinion, are we at a point where John Boehner is simply seen, no matter what he does to this point, no matter how many press conferences he holds, that he is seen by many as being ineffective and consistently capitulating to the president every time the president says executive order and throws that pen out here? Is he now completely, in the minds of many, weak and unreliable?
Well, that's for the American public to decide. But if you look at the track record over the past year or so, the speaker has tried in every way possible to come up with some kind of backdoor way to get amnesty through. If we're up to Speaker Boehner and a few other people in the House Republican leadership, they would cut a deal on amnesty tomorrow. What has been holding them back is, number one, the rank and file of their party in the House, and number two, their voting base. We saw Eric Cantor defeated over this issue. We now see that this ranks as the top domestic issue of concern to the American public. I think the only thing that prevents him and the leadership from cutting a deal on amnesty is the idea that the American public is paying attention and that they're not going to go along. But as far as what the president is doing, he's absolutely right there. The president is clearly overstepping his constitutional authority. And, he and the leadership are going to have to figure out what they're going to do, because the Constitution isn't really clear about that.
Ira Mehlman, the media director at FAIR. We thank you so much for joining us, Ira. We'll do it again soon.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, we begin a new feature here on MidPoint, taking what we've just heard and turning to one of our trusted commentators for the breakdown. Let's spin to this edition of The Opinionator. Let's welcome back to MidPoint, syndicated radio host on the Talk Radio Network, actress, author, and one who's not afraid to speak her mind. Sam Sorbo joins us. Sam, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you're the initial opinionator here. We have just heard a little bit more about what's gone on in Washington. Your take immediately, is John Boehner now completely ineffective?
Well, I don't know that he's ineffective. He passed a bill, but the problem is, where's the bill going to go? So in that sense, yeah, there's nothing's changed. Although now at least they have something that they can stand on and say, well, we did this much. And in fact, the bill accomplishes a little bit towards that end. But the problem is that he's lost credibility because he refused to act for so long. And as Ira pointed out, he acted contrary for so long. He seems to be very pro-amnesty in a lot of ways. And so this bill, I don't know if this really will get him out of those weeds.
Why, in your opinion, then, would he be so pro-amnesty, knowing that at the base, the core of his party, it is not what they want?
Well, the problem is when you send a politician to Washington, they become part of Washington, and I think they lose sight of where they're from, in a sense. And big business, apparently, I'm told that business wants a lot of illegals here because it dilutes the workforce and it lowers wages overall. So it seems, and what's odd to me is that the administration seems to be pro-amnesty, but that will dilute the workforce. In other words, wages will go down because when supply goes up, the demand goes down, and so they're working at cross purposes right now.
Is the only aim here, in your opinion, simply to change the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrival Act? It would seem as if that might be the main focus here.
Well, it's a good focus, and they did pass that legislation, but whether it'll make it through the Senate remains to be seen. I'm not holding my breath on that.
Where do we go from here, I think, is the next thing that everybody wants to know. About 60 seconds we have left, because you've got a bill, you've got the president, you've got the pen, and everybody waits now to see what happens next. But honestly, where do we need to go from here?
Well, I have a pen too. They're trying to rewrite the Declaration of Independence now. The job of the government is to protect the rights of the citizenry, and the government's not doing its job because our rights are being trampled.
Now, do you think the president is just itching right now to use that pen, and he's just waiting for the right moment now that everybody's gone?
You know, I think that it's kind of a dare. He's said in the past that he can't do the things that he then went ahead and did. He's done it before. And of course, everybody's pointing out that he said now that he can't change these immigration laws. And it's like a dare. It's like, so dare me to do it. And then he'll come out and he'll say, so sue me.
You cross that line, and here we go all over again. Sam Sorbo from the Talk Radio Network. An excellent job as the opinionator. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Sam. Later on this hour, Texas Governor Rick Perry is a man on a mission, but also a man who does not need to stoop so low and hyperbolic on his aim to protect the borders and his citizens. Next up, open the doors to the arena with a new immigration bill, what we've been talking about here, and what has both sides carping about right now, because neither side seems to be very thrilled. You'll tell us what you think about it, and we'll talk about it right here on MidPoint, where every day we question everything.